You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. See, Sean, let's start with LSU and Vanderbilt. Man, God, they were desperate for a win. You lose 3 straight, from the Arkansas win to the Vanderbilt win. It was 35 days. I mean, it was 5 weeks between wins. They had to get it. One of the things Brian Kelly said afterwards is they simplified the offense for Garrett Nussmeier. In what ways might you have noticed that watching the game on Saturday?
Decisiveness. And it was, here's a guy who's got, we know Nuss has got a high football IQ. What happens when you're not going good? And when you're turning the ball over and you're making decisions that you want and you're squeezing the ball a little harder and your mind's moving faster. The whole object that I try to teach quarterbacks when I'm training them or talking to them or when you're giving a clinic to somebody is, and when I'm training my guys, is to slow the mind down and speed the feet up. What's been going on with LSU is the opposite. That the mind is sped up. Everything's helter. You're like chasing a ghost and you're borrowing trouble. And that happens every single quarterback that's ever played, some for longer periods of time, some for short periods of time, have been through when you start to create it and you're thinking, is there 15 guys on defense? What do I got to do? And then you're a veteran. You know the expectations and you got high football IQ. And then you start to try and think like a coach and you get cute and all of a sudden you're overloading and clutter. Nobody wants clutter in their closet. Nobody should want clutter in their life, and you sure as hell don't want clutter as a quarterback. But it's there, and even the one that's when there's an open space, you create the clutter. And so simplifying it, and you really, Maddie, I'm being honest with you now. Let me take you back to when the Cowboys, and I know this for a fact because I've talked to Aikman, and when the 49ers, and it's NFL, but it still bears the truth on what's sometimes going good or bad. And the 49ers, when Walsh was there, and that group, Seifert, they ran, and I've talked to North Turner, mentioned this in the past, they had about 12 plays when they were going good and about 5 or 6 runs. They really, and when I was in Minnesota, we would overload you with formations and window dressing, and we'd script 20 plays or so, and we'd give you 18 different formations to start a game. But we'd give you 7 same plays. We run this one here, everything, boom, to you it looks like we want to confuse you, we want to make it look complex to you on defense, and simplify it for our offense. Not just for the execution for 11 guys, but so the quarterback's decisive ball comes out and we do what we do when we're playing in the street or when we're playing at the park. And I know that sounds so elementary and so simple, but that's what it is. And what happens? Bam, get the first one, get the second one. And now you're becoming what most quarterbacks have to be. Think 6 days a week, react on the 7th, which in college football is usually a Saturday. And so Nussmeier's got all this stuff. And what happens is you start to hear the whispers, and whether we say it or not, they become roars. The Brian Kelly's hearing it, and he's hearing it. Those two guys are always, that's the way it works. So how do you slow it down? Do you add more and then go to the line of scrimmage and here's 3 different checks and a simple outside run? No, we don't want to run uphill, but let's run some call it and run it's. Let's do what we do well. And we'll scheme it formation-wise against that team, running and pass. We don't need a lot. We just need to execute. We got to make it look like a lot. And to me, that's what it looked like to me. For the first time in a minute, that ball came out. Yeah. And Vanderbilt, we know in the past, Vanderbilt, we'd be saying it's Vanderbilt. We're not saying that now. They fly around, they hit, they're confident, their offense, they got some attitude. I mean, they do a lot of good things. And so this was a challenge going in. And there was even people who picked Vanderbilt to win a game. So what happens is then you go out and say, okay, this is what I do. I know how to execute this route combo. And then you just window dress it with formations, but you don't need to do much. And so when Norv and when the 49ers and Cowboys were doing it, they were winning all this to everybody else. John Taylor would run the slant one play. Jerry Rice come in motion, run the flat. And Rathman on the naked boot, he'd go to the flat. John Frank, the tight end, would cross, and you'd run the deep over with Rice. And then you'd come out of it and run the dig out of one formation, and Jerry Rice run the post. So you had same thing, Michael Irvin, Alvin Harper, Emmitt Smith, just run different. And they'd run the inside gut play and then the outside zone, and then you'd run toss sweep, and then we'd window dress it, and you'd have a guy cut off the backside on 60 counter, but about 4 or 5. But to you, it looks confusing. To the quarterback, now it's, okay, here's what you do, dude. Remember when you were at your best? Remember when you knew you had to make plays in games like Auburn and you had to make throws and you had to come back and you had to grind? You weren't overthinking. You were reacting. there is nothing worse for a quarterback than, whether it's good or bad, starting to get to the point where you are so overloaded with information that you can't react. And in college football at that level, in SEC football and in the NFL, split seconds, that's too late. That's a tip ball pick. That's a miss the window, because we're talking different speed and different level. Nussmeier knows this. So what it is, and then for him, instead of worrying about, do I get out of this? What if they're disguising? All the what ifs. And, as I've said before, if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. So when you, by that point in time, if she becomes your uncle, then you've lost another football game. And so we don't want that. And he took care of his business. And I think, and then what happens is, come back, this time against a defense that is nasty. You better not get too cute with it this week, but you better have a lot of window dressing, because they made Alabama look pedestrian. And they'll take your best player away, Oklahoma's defense. They just will. So, again, when the quarterback's right, then everybody else gets into it. And the last thing I need, not just Nussmeier, is 11 cats thinking too much. That's why you get into your playbook all week long. And then let's go play football, man. That's what got you a scholarship. Let's go do why we're on scholarship and the reason for it, and get back to what we know allowed us to win some football games and get out of. And I'm a big believer in, if it ain't working, fix it and change it. Get your ego and pride out of the way, that you got to be 75 plays. We all put a library in. We don't need to read every book in the library. And it seemed to me they went Cliff Notes version this week. For the young folks, that's abbreviated, and they executed it. And you know what? Ego gets bigger when you can execute 5, 6, 7, 8 different plays with 20 different formations and make it look different. And if you're Oklahoma, you're looking at saying, well, damn, they didn't do a lot, but they made it look different. And so they're going to have to defend it. This will be an incredible challenge for LSU, because this team is Venables defense. They fly, man. They're good.
Why? So a quick follow-up, and then I'll ask you about Oklahoma. But why then would you ever complicate an offense?
Right. Well, it comes back to, and that's a great, why not do this all the time, right, man?
Right, yeah. I mean, if it worked for Bill Walsh. I mean,
right.
Right. The Cowboys.
Why it also works for Bill and Norv and Jimmy Johnson. Let me give you a few names. Rice, Aikman.
Right.
The offensive line, Rathman. Montana wasn't half bad. He did okay.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you get the talent does help you to simplify, because if my guy's just better than you, and let's face facts. As much as I love Vanderbilt, what they do, LSU's got better players. Even though Vanderbilt's been impressive and they're growing, there's better players. So that's fine and dandy. But also, when you run into a team, whether it's Alabama or Georgia or Oklahoma, they got the same players you get. They recruited the same guys from the same high school. You got one of them, and they got the other. So there is something where you got to be, look at Andy Reid. And everybody thinks, but Andy still does the simple, throw the slow screen here, a little bubble down at the 5-yard line to Kelsey in the red zone. But they do. How many times a game do you think they tell Kelsey to go bang off the zone and get open? 12, 10
right.
To just find a spot. So simplifying it matters. But there also comes a point when you say, okay, guys study, and they say when they get to this in 3rd and 5, here's what they like to do out of this formation. So, and ego comes into play too, Matty. It just does. You get it and you say, well, look what we did with 10 plays. Well, let's expand it a little bit. And this situation, and then the temptation's there, because you say, man, I want to create this curl or this post dig out of a different formation, because, man, the middle of the field, they like to play cover 2, and Mike isn't active enough, whatever it is that you see. So you're right. And you say, well, why wouldn't he? I'll tell you what, I would always err on the side of window dressing, keep it simple, make it look complex, than I would overload me. And then at halftime, we got to go and say, we got too much. Take a third of that away, enough. And then I'd rather build it to where I can grow into the home, as opposed to, oh my gosh, the home's too big and I got to shut off 4 rooms. So I get what you're saying. But when you run into a team that's got dogs like you got, and they play it like you play it, you better have something to offset it, because sometimes when it's me versus you, man on man, I got to create something to get to take you off me and give me a little space. And that's why, and make no mistake about it, we have coordinators in the league, and in every league at every level, guys want to prove that they know more than the other guy. So what do we do by proving more instead of just executing? We want people on the game days and on the NFL shows to say, look how innovative he is. I got news for you. Don Coryell and Sid Gilman and Norm Chow and Lavelle Edwards were doing all this 40 years ago. It's just how you dress it up and the athlete you're using. But everybody thinks they reinvented it. They didn't. It's just how you call it, and when you have the guts to call certain stuff and go for it on 4th and 1, and you better have dogs to execute it. They're going to have to expand probably a little bit because Oklahoma's not stupid. But this is a hell of a matchup. If you want to see where your team is, that defense will allow Nussmeier and the rest of them. And once again, I need reaction as opposed to hesitation if they're going to take it to another level.
Yeah. What did Oklahoma do so well that kept Alabama, Sean, out of the end zone for the first time in 20 years?
Yeah,
Incredible.
amazing. It was actually, when you're watching, you say, okay, at some point, when's this going to change? Phenomenal. But Matty, they've been they're a top 12 wherever Venables goes. And hell, if they had an offense to match, the Oklahoma would be a hell of a football team, and we'd be talking about them. But they defensively, he's a great scheme guy, and he gets people that do it. He did it at Clemson, where he was when he did it at Oklahoma first time around as a coordinator. So I'm going to tell you what they did is what I was saying that LSU needed to do a couple weeks ago against Milroe is you cannot allow him to be two-dimensional. I think he had 15 attempts for like less than 15 yards.
Yeah, it was bad.
They made him. Now he can throw it. I mean, when he's running it, then you see big play. Then he's a two-dimensional guy. As I said about 3 weeks ago before, I said take away his feet first if possible. Now that's an easier said than done. From my living room, I could say it. They got to execute it, and then make him do what he has to do consistently. But when he's able to run it, and now it's 2nd and 2. Well, the passing game, you don't have to be a great thrower of the football to execute it because people are running free. You just got to make the ordinary simple play. What they did was they went into this game, and I haven't talked to Venables about it or anybody else. From my vantage point in watching it, they went into this game and said, that guy under center is not beating us. The old Belichick flaw that your best player does not get to beat me. Now, if all of a sudden somebody else rears their head and rushes for $190, or if a receiver makes a play, or special teams blocks 2 kicks, then we'll deal with that. He ain't beating us. And that's exactly what happened. And then all of a sudden what you get playing behind the sticks. Now it's 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 3rd and 9. And coordinators don't have a lot of plays for that. And then what he'll do is he'll pressure you, force you to get it out, catch and tackle, and now you're punting. Their game plan was brilliant. They didn't give up a huddle of big plays, but they went in knowing the best player on the field plays quarterback for Alabama. What's his biggest strength? Legs, and then mixing in play action and hitting the deep shot. How do we take that away? Well, we may have to sacrifice something, but in the process of shutting his legs down and completely eliminating his feet from the football game, in turn, they gave up a few yards, but you can live with that. And I've always believed you can throw for 5 million yards. As long as you're playing between the 20s and you're not getting the end zone, and they didn't, I don't care. So I saw our team do that back in 1982. I was starting as a sophomore at SC. We went to Norman. They had never been shut out. Where we'd been like 400 games or whatever it was, and Switzer was the coach, and that was like Marcus Dupree's debut. We beat them. Shut them out. Our defense pitched a shutout, and they had a whole bunch of great players, and nobody done it. It's because we hit the quarterback on the wishbone, and the pitch back, we made him stretch. He never got turned north and south. We ended up shutting them out and beating them in their building. So a lot of similarities. They took the best player away, and they were not willing to let Milroe beat them, and nobody else could.
Yeah, man. Jackson Arnold was 9 of 11 for 68 yards, and they won by 3 touchdowns.
Right, against a guy who's run for 8 billion yards, and unfortunately for some teams have seen the best of him in the worst way if he comes into your building. That's as good as anybody will ever play. Man, Jalen Milroe. Now the versatility. Nussmeier's a better thrower of the football, more consistent, and now you're going in, and Venables knows what he's in for. The question is, how are you going to make sure that you get Nussmeier overthinking? And if you're Brian Kelly, don't get out of this mode. Make it simple, because they're going to do everything they can to confuse you and force you into some long-yarded situations this weekend. That's what they specialize in, and they know their offense isn't good enough to beat most good teams right now, so they're going to have to win a lot on defense.
Hopefully we have a great night in Tiger Stadium on Saturday.
That would be awesome. And there's the other one. Yeah. Playing there is a brutal task for some, and I think the offense for Oklahoma could be overwhelmed in this game. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I liked what I saw at LSU last week.
He's on Twitter at Sean Unfiltered. Y'all give him a follow. Weekday Sports Talk 7090 there in Houston. Quarterback coach, guru, tutor. Love to chop it up every week with Sean Salisbury. Thanks as always, man. Happy Thanksgiving.
Honored, brother. Happy Thanksgiving to you, too. I always appreciate coming on, brother. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.